Okay, so that's a very quick overview. I'm going to move through this quickly so that I need you to understand how those big picture philosophies that you've read about that are going to be in my upcoming book. What does this look like? Well, the methodology I'm going to show you is initially started in 1985, and it's been rolled out across the world. I've done testing in companies all over the world. I did a huge amount of work in the UK, British Gas, British Airport Authority, ED&F Man, many companies I've worked with to expose the ideas. Um, the ideas will only work in companies where the board thinks it's their job to oversee mission critical objectives and risks. And it's taken me 40 years. I've been dogged in that, and I've had companies, and on our website, there's a FTSE 250 case study, 4 years. It shows you what it looks like when the board is prepared to share the state of risk with a board. And so I've had lots of successes. It's made me financially secure. I built software that manifested all these ideas. I had a successful run, sold it to companies around the world. KPMG used it in 22 countries. Um, it was a phenomenally rich learning experience. I ended up selling my software company to one of the top three GRC software companies in the space, which was then later bought by Thomson Reuters. That husband and wife team had an incredible run. The company eventually sold for over $100 million. And unfortunately, it was traditional thinking that won the day. They bought my company, and there was a 3-year earn in, earn out, and then it was retired. It was competing with the primary flagship product. So fair enough. It worked well for me and my family in a financial sense. It didn't work as well for my third born, which was the software. The book will be my fourth born. Passionately involved in all of them. So what are the three goals? I've mentioned the three IIA three lines model. Look at the circle that's around management. So this is the primary focus of the IIA 2020 three lines model. Management actions, including management to achieve organizational objectives. So that part was wonderful. Unfortunately, IIA had no real commitment to this model. The majority of internal audit departments are not objective centric. And when you read the purpose of internal audit, objective assurance and advice on all matters related to achievement of objectives, that's not how the majority of internal audit work today. They use control centric, compliance centric, process centric, risk centric, but they don't use objective centric. So the boards don't get concise information on the uncertainty linked to mission critical from internal audit in most companies. There are some that are changing, and some that I'm proud of that I've worked with that have gone on. So the three lines model, we actually want to get this notion of strong first line. On a negative point, though, it framed the role of the risk department, which is second line, in a way that still allowed them to be risk police people. And that was a flaw in this 2020 release. It still didn't see. My vision says that risk group helps management, but management is the primary assessor and reporter. The second line helps management do that. So on projects, that would be risk people working with the project people to fully pull out the state of uncertainty around the mission critical project objectives, which they should align with the company's mission critical objectives. So there should be clear line of sight. Company's mission critical objectives, project mission critical objectives, and what's the state of uncertainty linked to them all. This is COSO ERM 2017. It hasn't got as much uplift in Europe and the UK. But if we look at this is the core diagram in COSO ERM, it says a lot of things that I was thrilled with. It's got the center of the universe being strategy, business objectives, and performance. And it says ERM should be all about looking at the likelihood of achieving those three things. So I was thrilled when it was released. There are parts of it that I tweaked about, but philosophically, the idea of linking every risk assessment to performance was brand new. ISO doesn't really talk about it in ISO 31000. We want to change support functions like risk and internal audit from supply-driven to demand-driven services with clarity on what CEOs and the board really need and want. So remember what I said. The research unequivocally says the majority of the boards don't have clear purpose. Well, how do groups like Risk and Internal Audit, whose primary customer are boards, they similarly have no clear purpose. So their mandates are written in a way that you could have one person or you could have 30 people. The mandates and purpose statements are so vague and so unclear that they don't allow for clarity. And the clarity has to be, what does the board and the CEO want in terms of reliable information on the state of uncertainty, and what could be done to increase the likelihood of achieving objectives? So that's in my posts I promote internal audit and risk should have a shared purpose. Ensure management and the board get reliable information on the true state of risk uncertainty of achieving mission critical objectives with a level of uncertainty acceptable to the board and the CEO. Now, of course, that's not going to work in a world where the CEO doesn't want the board to know that. They will reject any objective-centric methodology. They are very happy having risk groups continue to create risk lists and internal audit to report 30, 40 internal control deficiencies on matters that most CEOs consider largely irrelevant to the success of the company. If not irrelevant, at least not very important. So the CEOs are very content with legacy risk management and legacy internal audit. It works very well to support the don't tell, don't ask syndrome because neither of them reports on the state of risk and uncertainty linked to mission critical objectives. Of course, there's many exceptions out there that I'm very proud of. These are the companies that are moving ahead. And my first company was called Card Decisions. My wife didn't like it, my children didn't like it, but I really liked it. CARD stood for Collaborative Assurance and Risk Design. It was the acronym all of my products at the time were branded and trademarked on. Cost me over $100,000 to trademark CARD, but it's what I felt passionate about. The notion of collaboratively deciding on how much uncertainty we're good taking in pursuit of success. Some companies take lots of risk and they get commensurate returns with taking those risks. And so what Card Decisions and my corporate logo was interlinked decision diamonds that look like steps. That cost me 50 grand. So I had a team of two people, highly creative. They came up with it. And that was my logo, my corporate logo, and the card was it's what I felt passionate. The job of risk and internal audit is not to decide how much risk is okay. It's to make sure that management and board are aware of those risks in order that they can do what they're paid for, which is decide how much risk to take. Now, of course, none of this works if the CEO doesn't want the board to know. And the board doesn't want to ask for it because they don't want to be burdened with that information. So remember, boards could change this tomorrow in 30 seconds. Chair of the board to the CEO, what are the company's mission critical objectives? Top strategic value creation and value preservation objectives key to success. Who will be reporting to us on the risk and uncertainty of achieving them? That's it. 1 minute is all it takes for the board chair to change governance forever around the globe. However, the don't tell, don't ask syndrome says the board chair doesn't want to ask it. And the CEO is very happy with the board not asking it. So this is where we're at this juncture in history. In companies that do have, I've had clients that spend $100 million a year on internal audit and risk functions. The numbers around the globe each year that shareholders pay is in the many, many trillions for these two groups. That's many, many trillions of dollars being spent on risk management functions and internal audit functions. And in other companies, there are many other second line functions. Companies have Sarbanes-Oxley groups. They have foreign corrupt practices support groups. They have third-party vendor risk groups. They have many, many silos that continue to proliferate. All of them could be using the same methodology of objective-centric risk management. So the regulators after the 2008, they got it. The problem is that boards were asleep at the switch. Companies were taking all kinds of huge risks. The managements were getting rich. The boards were asleep at the switch, and the world almost came to its knees. In the absence of intervention of governments around the world, literally there was going to be a world meltdown. And when they studied it after, the Financial Stability Board and the Bank for International Settlements is in Switzerland. You may not be familiar with it, but they're the people that study what regulators are doing and what they should do in order that there be a better world in terms of economic and success. So we want to respond. This is the OSFI. It's all about board oversight, but all of these people have been reluctant to just simply say, we expect boards to oversee mission critical objectives, what they are, and the risk being accepted and uncertainty of achieving them. They don't want to say it. And there's a whole lot of complicated reasons why people like the UK governance code. King just released King 5 in South Africa. It comes the closest yet to saying the board should oversee strategy and risk, but it won't say the board should oversee mission critical objectives, top strategic value creation and value preservation objectives, and the risk being accepted in pursuit of them. It's close. It's the closest thing yet. So if you haven't read King 5, it's very new. It was just issued in the last 5 weeks. It's the closest yet. The UK governance code, close, but when it came to risk, it said boards should just oversee lists of principal risks. And boards took the code at its word, told management, produce some lists of principal risks. We'll review them, and then that covers paragraph 28 of the UK governance code. So it does everything that's wrong about risk management, and the FRC is a big part of why it's wrong. And I've told them that point blank to their face. I've written it to them. I've sent missiles to them. I've tried to get them to change. They won't. The institutional investors keep talking about they want more board engagement in entity purpose, in entity strategic planning processes. Boards have not found a way to do it, and there's a simple reason. They get lists of principal risks, and they get stacks of internal audit reports on internal control deficiencies. What they don't get is reports on risk and uncertainty linked to mission critical objectives. So the process is dead simple. It's not at all complicated. It's not hard to explain. Step one, we have to agree what the company's mission critical objectives are. You can do that at the entity level. You can do that at the departmental level. You can do that at the project level. What are the mission critical objectives, the end results that all the players in the company need to achieve? We recommend it be done at the entity level first. Usually it's about 12 to 18 objectives in that register. That's step one. It's not an easy step. most companies do not have a list of mission critical objectives that have been agreed and defined. And they will have strategic plans, but those won't cover value creation or value preservation objectives. Step two is an important one. Each of those mission critical objectives has an owner sponsor. That is the management person primarily responsible for assessing and reporting to the CEO and the board on the state of uncertainty linked to those objectives. So that's step two. But a part of step two is not just you can assess and report on something in 3 minutes. If I said, okay, I want you to assess in your home at home, if you have an objective of preventing injuries and fatalities in the home you live in, um, how do you feel about your current precautions that you're taking? So you could think about that and you could write up 5 minutes of documentation, and then you could give me a score on from it's fully acceptable or it's not acceptable at all, and I'm working on multiple changes right now because I've realized my home, which was okay until I had 3 grandchildren, is now totally unsafe. So we're doing a complete overhaul of our house because we could actually kill our grandchildren now because of the way that we don't have enough precautions for toddlers. All right, well, that's an example of it at a very simple level. We could also spend some serious time. We could look at the statistically probable injuries and deaths in homes. We could stratify them by old people, by young people, by middle-aged people, by disabled people. We could then look at the risks that cause them to be injured and die. We could then say, well, what have you got in the way of risk treatments to manage each of these risks? So it would take more time. That's what we call risk assessment rigor. And in this methodology, we actually ask for nobody's even going to do it. That's not assigned rating. Not rated is we have an owner sponsor, but they haven't put a rating down yet because they're thinking about it. Then they go up to, we're going to spend an hour or two. Ironically, asking somebody to spend an hour or two and actually decide an opinion that goes to the board is more rigor than the majority of companies have right now on mission critical objectives. It just hasn't been done that way. And the third step we're going to do in step two is we're going to say, does the board want any independent assurance that what management is telling the board is true? So that's the last part of step two. Step three, we run this whole framework. We recommend this be done by the Strategy and Value Oversight Committee, step 1 and 2. Step 3, we take it to the board and we say, here's what we think are the mission critical objectives key to the success of this entity. Here's the level of rigor we're going to attack each of those objectives at in terms of thinking about what could go wrong and our opportunities. And here's which ones are going to be independently assured. Okay, steps 1 to 3, you can get these done literally in a motivated company in a month. So in our case study, we locked up for 2 days with the leadership team, banged out the first ever objectives register, put the ratings in step 2 down, ran it by the board, and then we moved on to step 4. So it can happen very rapidly. Step 4, we're going to actually go do those assessments at the level of risk assessment rigor. That's rigor with a U for those of you in the UK, no U for those of you in the United States. Canada is kind of confused on the point, so it depends on which spell check you're using. But rigor is an important piece of this methodology. The higher the level of rigor, you can get very statistical. You can do Monte Carlo simulations about what might happen, the interface between different risks, stochastic analysis. You can use hugely sophisticated tools. Or you can just use gut feel and chat it up for 30 minutes and see where that takes you. Ironically, that's more than most do on objectives. Step 5, reporting goes to the board. This is the building block. These are all free tools. So if you go to the resources page of Risk Oversight Solutions, you'll get all of these. You'll get an MS Word template if you want to use templates and do these analysis. The critical point here, I actually called this certainty status line for about 2 years. My psychology team convinced me that's wrong. Certainty implies something that people don't like. So the one that I'm sticking with is uncertainty status line. Is the current level of uncertainty you will achieve the most important objectives key to success acceptable to the management and the board? Very simple methodology. In residual risk status, you have to put in current performance data. So that's a key differentiator not called for by ISO 31000. Every risk assessment is linked to the performance being achieved by that combination of risks and risk treatments. This is what I said about the conscious decision on risk assessment rigor. We have a far more detailed definition for each of the levels, but this is a step most companies do not take today. Which objectives warrant higher level of assessment rigor than other objectives? Probably the biggest risk in risk management is management not deciding how much assessment rigor to put into thinking about risk. And boards similarly. Conscious decision, which of those data sets, boards have not defined with any clarity how much independent assurance they want on data that comes to them. Of course, financial statements, it was decided for them. Financial statements will come with an external auditor opinion on the reliability of the financial statements. Safety sometimes has ISO audits that are auditing safety. So sometimes the board does get independent assurance, but mostly the board relies on CEOs. And here's a word for you if you're not familiar with it. National Association of Corporate Directors calls it asymmetric information. And the definition of asymmetric information is information known to management that the board is not being told. That is the don't tell, don't ask governance syndrome. We have a framework. It's a 9-category framework. Again, this is a free download on our website. It asks for any company, ask yourself 9 big questions. At the entity level, at the project level, at the departmental level. So 9 big picture questions. Behind the 9 questions, these are all of the vehicles you can use to support those 9 principles. So there's 100 principles plus. Each of those has trigger questions. All of this comes down to what the board gets. Very concise information, which objectives management is currently good with the current level of uncertainty, and that all of the big risks have been shared. That's the green rating. And then we move up. So very simple system, and it produces these kind of concise reports for the board. Here's our 12 mission critical objectives. Here's management's current uncertainty rating. Here's what the chief risk officer has to say about the process and about management's decisions on acceptability. And here's what the chief audit executive has to say about the reliability of those reports that any board member can click and see the full analysis that was done to support the rating.